The crimson bird stirred in the deep hollow of despair, its feathers dark red, glinting with embers of hope. In a small town overshadowed by gray walls and silent dreams, lived Erez, a young boy with wild curls and midnight black eyes that held storms. He watched the world move around him, friends leaving, laughter fading, doors closing. His father, Malik, had once been a strong man whose footsteps echoed purpose. Now he trudged home each day, battered by layoffs and broken pride. His mother, Zainab, with soft brown eyes and gentle hands, tried to anchor the house with love, but even she trembled at the silence that filled the rooms after dusk. Ariz felt the ache of invisibility. At school, he sat at the back, unnoticed. He heard murmurs of, he might never make it. Just another dreamer. Yet inside him a flicker remained. He remembered one night staying up watching the stars. If the sky can hold countless stars and still be dark, I too can hold hope and still be broken, he whispered. That whisper became his secret promise. As he walked the cracked pavement from home to school, passing shuttered shops and idle machines, he told himself, I will rise. The hook of his life began when one afternoon, he found an old book in a dusty corner of the local library. Its cover was scorched at one edge, pages yellowed, and the title nearly illegible, Phoenix's Flight. He opened it and read, From ashes we ascend, from defeat we discover wings. A chill ran through him. He closed the book and looked at his reflection in a broken window pane. Are you ready? He asked. The reflection did not answer, but in that moment he felt alive. Not carefree, terrified and trembling, but alive. The journey had begun. The following morning, Ariz awoke before dawn. He crept out of the house so as not to disturb his parents still, sleeping under the weight of worry. The air smelled faintly of damp earth and possibility. He jogged to the old field behind the factory, where rusted machines once roared and now stood silent like monuments of lost hope. With each step, he felt his pulse synchronize with the heart of that deserted place. He started by running, not fast, not graceful, but persistent. He ran until his legs burned and his breath ragged, until the sky brightened with pale gold. He collapsed onto the ground, looked at his palms, scratched, dirty, and for a moment the shame of his condition threatened to swallow him. Why do you do this? A voice inside him asked. He sat up and answered, because I must. Because the boy who sat at the back of the class deserves to stand at the front. Because the son who watched his father fade deserves to see him rise again. He picked himself up, wiped dirt from his palms, and made his way home, heart pounding with new purpose. That day at school, he declared to himself, he would improve. He would study hard, wake early, train his mind as well as his body. He found a corner in the library and revisited the book Phoenix's Flight. He read of ancient legends, of birds that burnt and rose, of souls tested by fire. The words stirred something unnameable deep within him. His teacher, Miss Farah, glanced at him as he scribbled notes with fierce concentration. Ariz, she asked after class. You seem different lately. He forced a smile. Just thinking, he said. As he walked home, he noticed his mother sitting quietly under the porch light, knitting quietly. He sat beside her. Ma, he said softly, I'll do something big one day. She looked up, surprise and love in her gentle brown eyes. I believe in you, she whispered, and in that moment his vow felt less lonely. Days turned into weeks. Ariz's routine unfurled like a small banner of hope over the gray town. He woke early, ran, studied, trained. His arms grew stronger, his mind sharper, but resistance appeared in the shape of his own self-doubt. One evening, after a failed test, he sat under the dim light of his desk, tears gliding silently down his cheeks. The words of the book echoed, From ashes we ascend. He clenched his fist. Look at me, he said to his reflection in the darkened window. You are not the boy who quits. Yet the voice whispered back, You are not enough. Fear crept in. He phoned his father, who had been silent for days. Pa, Ariz said, I messed up today. Malik's voice came weak but real. Son, I've seen worse falls in my life than yours. Get up. The simple words struck him like thunder. He decided that night to confront his fear. The next morning he didn't just run, he sprinted. He didn't just study, he stayed longer. He didn't just dream, he dared. The factory field where the machines stood silent became his proving ground. On one run, he tripped over a broken piece of metal, twisted his ankle, fell hard. He lay there, feeling the pain, the shame, the ridicule of emptiness around him. But as he looked up at the vast, indifferent sky, he thought, if the sky doesn't bend to me, I will bend myself to the sky. He picked himself up, limped home, then spent nights in stretching and strengthening. His mother noticed the limp and asked, He nodded. She held him and said nothing, her silence louder than any cheer. He slept with the limp, woke with it, and carried it like a scar of battle. In class the next day, he sat straighter, spoke up once when asked, and felt the flicker of pride. He realized that progress is not the absence of pain, it's moving through pain. The turning point came when the local athletics meet was announced. The town's stadium, cracked seats and overgrown grass, still held the promise of glory. Ares signed up for the 800-meter run. In front of him stood boys stronger, faster, uniforms clean as if they were born for speed. He felt small. The night before the race, he reread the scorched book. He traced the images of the phoenix, bird of flame rising from ashes. He wrote in the margin, "I am the ashes. I will rise." Sleep evaded him. When dawn arrived, the bleachers filled, some with curious onlookers, some with old men who remembered their own youth. The starter's pistol cracked. Ares surged, his heart thundering louder than the crowd. The first lap passed, then the second. His legs screamed. The stronger boys pulled ahead. Some glanced back at him and smirked. But he shut out the world, listened only to his breathing, remembered his father's words, his mother's belief, the book's promise. With 200 meters to go, his lungs burned, his vision blurred. He thought, if I stop now, I will learn to quit for the rest of my life. So he pushed. Every stride became a rebellion, every drop of sweat a testament. As he crossed the finish line, he didn't win. He placed third. The crowd cheered politely, but inside him there was a roar. He had finished. He had faced the strongest and not collapsed. His coach, a grizzled man named Basit, slapped his back and said, "You ran like you meant it." Ares smiled through the pain in his legs, feeling alive. That night, Malik and Zainab took him out to a small celebration, just pizza and a flicker of hope in their old home. Malik said quietly, "You turned your limp into strength." "Son," Zainab hugged him, tears glistening. And Ares realized, you don't need to win the race to become a winner. You just need to finish it any way you can. After the meet, the whispers began anew, but this time they included his name. "Did you see that kid with the limp?" He finished. Friends began to nod. Teachers acknowledged him. He still sat at the back of the class, but his posture changed, shoulders back, head held high. He volunteered for extra assignments. He helped younger students. He trained with purpose. Yet inside, fear still lurked. Fear of plateauing. Fear of falling back into invisibility. One rainy afternoon, he went to the field without telling anyone. The rain drenched him, soaked his clothes, made his shoes heavy. He ran until his body trembled. He paused under a tree, water dripping from the leaves, and looked at the old book in his bag. It had cracked spine now. He opened it to a page. When the fire has consumed the old self, the new self flies unbound. He wondered, am I consumed yet? Or am I still the same scared boy? He shut the book, felt the rain, and whispered, I will be consumed. The next day, the school announced its annual general knowledge contest. Ares signed up. He knew athletics weren't his only path. He spent his evenings reading, asking questions, staying after classes. He stumbled, wrong answers, missing facts, but he persisted. When the contest day came, the auditorium felt huge. Under the lights, the microphone seemed like a torch. He answered a tough question and saw the nods. He answered another and felt the smile of his teacher. He did not win first place, but he placed second. As he accepted his certificate, he felt not relief but hunger. Hunger for more. After the event, Malik placed his hand on Ares' shoulder. You're not done? Yet Ares looked around the auditorium. Some students celebrated. Others sat quietly. He realized the race didn't end. The contest didn't finish his story. It just advanced it. He walked home that evening under a sky that still held clouds. It hadn't cleared, but in him, a thunder had risen. The town's factory where Malik worked announced layoffs again. The walls of their home trembled under the weight of uncertainty. Ares watched his father's smile falter, his mother's humming fade. He felt the old fear seep back of being powerless. But this time he chose not to be silent. He told Malik, Pa, you taught me to run when I couldn't walk. Now let me help you. Malik nodded, tears in his eyes. Ares began helping with odd jobs after school, tutoring younger children, doing errands, even helping in the local shop. The money was small, but symbolically huge. One evening, Malik said, You're carrying us now? Ares shook his head. We carry each other. Meanwhile, he balanced training, contests, and family responsibility. The weight pressed heavy, but he began to see it as fuel. The book lay open on his desk. Strength is forged in pressure. Wings are grown in storms. He underlined that line. He found a mentor in his coach Basit, who told him to focus. Your mind must be as trained as your body. So in the silence of the night, he meditated on his goals: serve his family, shine his town, inspire those who believed they were unseen. Days passed. He struggled. He failed at times. He lost a friendly race. He forgot an answer in a contest. Each time he returned to the field, to the library, to the old book, he said to the crimson bird in his heart, "Grow wings, fly," and slowly he did. The moment of revelation came when Malik collapsed, suddenly at work from exhaustion. The hospital hall smelled of antiseptic and fear. Zainab's tears fell silently onto Araz's shoulder as doctors moved around. Thousands of thoughts thundered in his mind. If I don't succeed, we will drown. He stood by his father's bedside, hand in hand, and in the stillness made a vow. I will make you proud. The next day, despite being drained by grief and worry, he ran. The field was brighter now, not because the sun shone, but because he carried purpose. He ran with tears in his eyes and fire in his heart. His coach watched and said, "You are different now." He nodded, not because he felt it, but because he believed it. At school, his grades lifted. The contest he entered afterwards, he won. His name echoed in the corridors. He looked at those who once doubted him, not with disdain, but with quiet determination. The book's pages seemed to glow now, not the ashes, but the will to rise defines the phoenix. He realized the phoenix isn't just a bird of myth, it's a state of heart. Ares gathered his friends and told them his story. He said, "We all burn sometimes, and when we do, we have two choices, fade or fly." Some listened. Some still doubted. He didn't mind, because now he knew that belief can come late, but the act of rising starts now. In the town's annual sports gala, Ares was selected to represent his school for the 400-meter sprint. This time the field was tougher, the expectations higher. There were new faces, leaner runners, faster times. He felt the old fear of being left behind, creeping in, but he also felt the strength of everything he had carried, surging within. In his last practice, he felt his ankle ache, the same twist from before. Pain flared, but he ignored it. On the day of the race, he stood at the starting line. Heart hammering, crowd roaring. The pistol fired. He ran. The muscles burned. The legs threatened to quit. He thought, "This is for my father, my mother, my town, my book." He surged ahead in the curve, locked his sight on the finish. In the last 50 meters, every fiber of him screamed. He crossed first. The crowd erupted. Ares collapsed. Tears and sweat mingled on his face. His coach lifted him. His parents cheered. The book lay on his bag. Now a companion, not a relic. In that moment, the town seemed to rise with him. The gray walls seemed less heavy. The silent dreams seemed louder. He realized, when you give your body, mind, heart, and spirit to rise, the world shifts under your feet. That victory didn't make him invincible. It made him visible, and visibility was his new power. Victory brought new challenges. People expected more of Ares. He felt the pressure. The limp returned slightly, the pain whispering. Critics emerged. So what now? Will he fall back? He knew the danger. Rest too easy, fade too fast. He refused. He diversified. He joined the debate team. He volunteered at a local shelter. He tutored kids whose shoes were torn and books were few. He told them his story. I was once invisible. Then I made noise through action. They listened, eyes bright. But in the quiet night, he sat alone with the old book and asked, "What now?" The book responded, "The phoenix's flame is brightest not when it rises, but when it lights others." He closed it and scribbled that line in his notebook. He realized his journey wasn't solely about him. It was about transformation. One afternoon, he visited his father's old workplace, a shuttered factory. He talked to the workers, listened to their fears, their hopes. He offered what he could: help, a plan, a promise. He organized a small running club for the youth in town, these same kids who sat at the back, invisible like he once was. He taught them every step matters. Every run counts. And as he saw their first strides, he felt the crimson bird's wings stretching in someone else. The movement became bigger than one person. He discovered that rising alone was worthy. Rising together was legendary. The toughest test came when a major regional meet invited him. The field was vast, the competition fierce. His ankle flared up badly just days before. He considered withdrawing, but then he thought of Malik's failing body, of Zainab's silent hope, of those kids in his club who believed. He said aloud, "I will fly." On the day of the event, the stadium lights blazed. Cameras flashed. Spectators numbered thousands. He felt small, but he also felt prepared. He started strong. Halfway through, his ankle screamed. Muscles threatened. But he kept going. He remembered the book. When the bird chooses flight, the wind itself stands aside. He shifted his stride. He relaxed his breath. He ran not for victory but for ascent. He crossed the line third again, but this time the roar was louder. The prize bigger. The announcer said, "From nothing to something, a story of the human heart." Aris stood on the podium, medal around his neck, tears flowing. He looked at his parents, the club members, the old book in his bag, and he realized he had not just run a race, he had rewritten his story. The limps, the fears, the nights of doubt, they were not erased. They were honored. They were wings. In the press interview, he said, "I came here broken, but I came to fly." Before dawn, Aris woke. The world was still dark, but inside him, something had begun to glow. He slipped out of the house quietly. The air smelled of dust and dew. He walked to the empty field behind the silent factory, the same place where his father once worked. He stood there trembling and said aloud, "I'll rise from here." He began to run, not far, not fast but real. His legs burned, lungs screamed, but he didn't stop. When he finally fell to his knees, he looked at his palms, bruised, dirty, and smiled. "Every scar's proof I tried." From that day, Aris made a promise to train every morning, to study harder, to believe even when no one else did. When he returned home, his mother noticed the dirt and sweat. "What happened?" she asked. "I started something," he said. She didn't understand, but she smiled anyway. That night, Ares opened Phoenix's flight again and underlined one line. "The fire that destroys is the same fire that shapes." He didn't know it yet, but that fire had already begun shaping him. Weeks passed. Aris's mornings filled with running, his nights with books, but success never came easy. One day he failed a school test. The paper lay before him, red marks everywhere. The laughter of his classmates echoed in his ears. He walked home in silence, fighting tears. That night he stood before his mirror and said, "You're not good enough." The reflection stared back silently. Then he remembered the words of his father, once said long ago, "The strongest metal is forged in fire." Ares clenched his fists. "Then burn me," he whispered. The next morning he ran harder. His shoes tore. His body ached. He fell, got up, fell again. Each time the pain screamed, "Stop." But his heart whispered, "Keep going." One evening his teacher, Miss Farah, noticed the change. "Aries," she said. "You look tired, but your eyes are alive." That night he wrote in his notebook, "Pain is temporary. Rise is forever." The struggle had become his teacher, the pain his training partner, and every failure another step toward becoming the phoenix he dreamed of. When the school announced a small race for students, Aries signed up. Everyone laughed. "You?" "The quiet boy," they teased. But Aries only smiled. He remembered his secret mornings, his burning legs, his promise under the dawn sky. On the day of the race, he stood at the starting line, heart pounding like thunder. The whistle blew. The others dashed forward like arrows. Aries stumbled but refused to quit. He ran through laughter, through pain, through doubt. With every breath he said, "Rise, rise, rise." When he crossed the finish line, he wasn't first, he was third. But the crowd clapped. For the first time, he felt seen. His mother hugged him tight that evening, whispering, "You did it." Aries smiled softly. "No, Ma, I just started." That night he opened his burnt book again. Under the flickering light, he wrote on the last page, "A phoenix doesn't need to win to rise. It only needs to keep flying." After that day, Aries' story began to spread through the school. He became the boy who ran every morning, the one who didn't quit. His friends started joining him. Even his teacher began cheering for him. But just as the fire inside him grew, life tested him again. His father lost another job. Bills piled up. His mother cried quietly at night, thinking Aries didn't notice. He did, and it hurt. The next morning, he ran farther than ever before, tears mixing with sweat. "This pain will not break me," he shouted to the wind. He began tutoring younger kids for a few rupees, helping his mother, training, studying, everything at once. Exhaustion clawed at him, but so did hunger for change. One night he looked at the stars again and whispered, "I will make them proud." The crimson light of dawn touched his face, and in that glow the boy who once hid in the shadows was becoming something new, something unstoppable. The light in Ars's home dimmed again. His father, Malik, came home one evening with tired steps and empty hands. "The factory's closed," he said quietly, placing his lunchbox on the table. His mother froze. The room fell silent. Ars watched his father's shoulders slump. The man who once carried the world now crushed beneath it. That night, the silence broke Ars more than any words could. But instead of despair, he chose a vow. Standing outside under the stars, he clenched his fists and whispered, "If my father can't stand right now, then I will stand for him." The next day, after school, Aries began tutoring kids in his neighborhood. He earned a few coins, but more than money, he earned strength. He watched the smiles of younger children and realized, purpose doesn't always come from victory. Sometimes it's born in service. His mother began smiling again, proud of her 13-year-old son who carried more responsibility than most men. Yet inside, fear still gnawed. What if it's not enough? One night his father found him still awake, working by candlelight. "You don't have to fix everything, son," Malik said softly. Ars looked up, eyes fierce, and replied, "But I can try." That was the night his fire grew from ambition into love, the kind of love that builds heroes. The next morning, rain poured like the heavens were testing him. The streets flooded, thunder cracked, but Ars still went running. Barefoot, soaked, trembling, he refused to stop. "If storms can roar, so can I," he shouted. That same week, his school announced a scholarship test, a chance to study at the city's top academy. His teacher, Miss Farah, encouraged him. "Aries, this could change your life." He nodded, determined. Days turned into sleepless nights. Between helping his parents and tutoring, he barely found time to study, but every free second became a battle. He read under streetlights when electricity failed, memorized lessons while washing dishes. The day of the test arrived. His heart raced faster than any run. When results came, he saw his name, second place. Not enough to win the scholarship, not enough to escape. He sat alone behind the school, eyes wet. "Maybe I'm not meant for more," he whispered. Just then, his phone buzzed. A message from Miss Farah. "You didn't fail. You inspired the entire class. They all want to try next year because of you." Aries smiled through tears. That's when he realized something powerful. Even when he didn't win, he could still lead. Months passed. Aries' father's health began to weaken from stress and sleepless nights. Hospital visits drained their savings. One evening, Aries found his mother silently crying beside an unpaid bill. He sat next to her and held her hand. "Don't cry, Ma, I'll fix it." But deep down, he was scared. He began working extra hours, teaching, cleaning, helping neighbors. His body ached, but his mind refused to quit. He remembered a line from Phoenix's Flight. "Even ashes have strength." They hold the memory of fire. That line became his mantra. He carried that fire through exhaustion, through hunger, through pain. One day his father asked, "Why do you push yourself so hard?" Aries replied quietly, "Because I want to give you the peace you gave me." Malik smiled weakly, proud, but worried. Aries didn't see himself as brave. He saw himself as necessary. His friends began calling him the runner who never rests. But every night, when he looked at his reflection, he saw not a hero, but a boy balancing between fear and faith. And yet, even fear could not stop the phoenix from growing wings. The annual sports championship arrived again, the event Aries once dreamed of. He trained harder than ever, his feet bleeding, muscles sore, but his heart unstoppable. This time the whole town came to watch. The boy who refused to quit. His parents stood at the edge of the track, hands clasped, praying. The whistle blew. Aries sprinted forward like fire itself. For the first 400 meters, he led. Then pain struck, a sharp twist in his old ankle. He stumbled, the crowd gasped. For a second, everything froze. "Give up!" his mind screamed. "Get up!" his heart roared. He pushed again, limping, dragging himself through pain. The finish line blurred through tears, but he crossed it. Not first, not even second, but he finished. The stadium erupted. People clapped, cheered, cried. His coach ran to him, shouting, "You did it, kid!" Aries smiled faintly and said, "No, coach, we did it." That night, his father whispered, "You taught me how to rise again." And for the first time in his life, Aries realized, and sometimes, finishing the race is braver than winning it. After that race, Aries became the symbol of hope in Miranpur. Newspapers wrote, "The 13-year-old who taught a town to rise." But Aries didn't stop there. He started a small running club for children who'd given up on dreams. He taught them not just to run, but to believe. It's not about being fast, he told them. It's about not stopping. The once empty field, behind the factory, now echoed with laughter and footsteps every morning. His father began coaching kids in strength. His mother helped tutor them after school. Their broken home had become a center of purpose. Aries kept his old burnt book on his desk, its pages torn but sacred. One day, he underlined a line that defined his journey. "The phoenix burns not to die, but to light the sky." He looked at the children running and realized his fire had become their light. That evening, as the sun set over Miranpur, the boy who once felt invisible stood tall, glowing in the golden light. He whispered, "This is what rising feels like." Just when everything seemed to bloom, life tested Aries again. One cold morning, his father collapsed at the running field. The sirens screamed through the streets as Aries ran behind the ambulance, heart pounding harder than ever before. The doctor's words were sharp. "He's exhausted. Too much stress." Aries sat in the hospital corridor, hands trembling. "It's my fault," he whispered. "He worked because of me." His mother placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, beta," she said softly. "He worked because he saw your fire." And that gave him hope. That night, sitting beside his father's bed, Aries opened Phoenix's flight again. A line seemed to shine brighter than before. "The flame that burns too bright must learn to rest, not die." Tears rolled down his cheeks. For the first time, Aries realized, strength isn't just fighting every battle. It's knowing when to breathe. He promised his father, "When you get better, we'll run together again." His father smiled faintly. In that moment, the phoenix inside Aries learned a new truth. Fire without peace turns to smoke. Days turned into weeks. Malik recovered slowly, his health improving, his smile returning. Aries, meanwhile, changed his pace. He balanced work, rest, and gratitude. He spent time at the running club, teaching the younger kids. "Run for joy," he told them, "not for fear." His old teacher, Miss Farah, watched proudly as Aries helped children who once felt invisible, just like he had. One afternoon, a reporter came to interview him for a youth magazine. "What motivates you, Aries?" she asked. He smiled and said, "Pain because it taught me to listen, fear because it taught me to fight, love because it taught me to rise," the reporter asked. "And the book? Phoenix's Flight?" He looked at the burnt pages resting on his desk and replied, "It gave me wings, but the people around me gave me wind." The article, titled "The Boy Who Turned Pain into Power," went viral across the region. Aries didn't chase fame, it found him. And he used it to open more clubs, bring in more children, and light more hearts. The boy who once ran alone was now leading a generation. By 14, Aries' running club had grown into a small movement. Children from nearby towns joined, parents volunteered, Even teachers offered help. The once empty factory field was now filled with laughter, running shoes and dreams reborn. Aries spoke at schools, sharing his journey. You don't need to win every race, he told the crowd. You just need to finish the one that matters, the one against yourself. His words touched hearts. He started writing his own journal, calling it The Crimson Path. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, a little boy from his club asked, Arisbai, when do we become phoenixes? Aries smiled and knelt down. The day you fall and still choose to rise, he said. That night, sitting under the same stars where his dream was born, he whispered, I'm no longer the only flame. He looked at the field glowing, with energy and thought. The phoenix doesn't rise once. It keeps rising through others. 2 years later, at 15, Aries stood on the track of a national competition. Cameras flashed. Banners waved. His heart thudded with the rhythm of a dream reborn. This was his biggest race yet, against the best runners in the country. The whistle blew. He launched forward, his steps strong, his eyes fierce. Every stride carried memories. His mother's tears, his father's fall, his first failure, his dusty field, the laughter of the kids who now called him coach. The last lap came. His legs screamed, lungs burned, but his spirit blazed. He saw the finish line. From ashes we ascend, echoed in his soul. He crossed the line, second place. The crowd erupted. Cameras zoomed in on his teary eyes. Reporters rushed forward. How does it feel to lose by a fraction? One asked. Aries smiled and replied, I didn't lose. I learned how far I've come. That moment went viral across social media. People called him the real phoenix of Miranpur. But for Aries, the victory wasn't the medal. It was the journey that turned pain into purpose. Years later, Aries stood on a grand stage, now 16. Stronger, calmer, wiser. The audience filled with students, parents, coaches, and dreamers. Behind him flashed the title, Rise Again. He stepped to the microphone and looked around, eyes full of expectation. He took a deep breath and began. Once I was a 13-year-old boy who thought his life was over. My father lost his job. My mother cried at night. And I failed more times than I can count. But then I found a burnt book that said, From ashes we ascend. That line changed me. I realized, maybe life isn't about never falling. Maybe it's about how many times you stand back up. Every time you fail, every time you hurt, every time you cry, you're not breaking. You're becoming. The pain that tries to bury you will one day become your wings. I am not special. I am proof that you can rise again no matter how hard you fall. Because inside each of us lives a phoenix, waiting to burn and be reborn. The crowd rose to its feet, clapping, cheering, crying. Aries looked up at the sky and whispered softly, Thank you. Above him, the sunset glowed crimson, the same color as the fire that once started in a broken boy's heart. The story of the Crimson Phoenix wasn't ending. It was just beginning, in every soul that chose to rise again.